Well, welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us to this workshop on building resilience during difficult times with Kylee Stone. Thanks for making the time and getting online. Now, before we start, I'll just go through a few housekeeping things. First of all, thank you for joining us again. We're planning to finish and keeping this exactly to an hour, depending on our start time. You can ask questions at any time, but you have to remember we can't actually hear you. So the way to ask a question is to actually use the Q&A function on the screen. But during the workshop, because this is an interactive workshop, Kylie's going to be asking you to respond. And in responding, we'd prefer you to use the chat boxes so that you can put your responses there. Now, we know that everyone will be able to see that. But we'd like you to participate by giving us feedback as we go along. And so you'd use the chat box to do that. But to ask a specific question, use the Q&A function. You can make the Q&As or the questions anonymous. And we are recording this session for future use. And we'll be sharing that recording with you. Now, the other thing is, if we don't get enough time to answer all your questions, we'll have a record of all those, and we'll be sending out an email with those answers to the most frequently asked questions. So if everyone's ready, let's get started. And what do we actually mean by developing resilience in uncertain times? Well, I think we're all sitting here feeling quite uncertain. You know, I don't think the word unprecedented has been overused, but we're living in times that are certainly uncertain. And so how do we go about keeping our businesses thriving and safeguarding not only our own well-being, but everyone else around us? If there was ever a time for resilience, it's now. And there's someone here in Kylee Stone who I've known personally and professionally for almost 20 years. She must have been a baby when we met. But I've known her for almost 20 years, and I can't think of anyone that is more qualified to discuss this. So let's welcome Kylee. Thank you.
Thanks, Darren. I like your, I must have been a baby. Certainly feels like it at times. So thank you for having me. I very much looking forward to today's session and providing you with some very simple and practical tools that not only have I come across in my professionally, but also personally. So my experience goes back 20 years now. I've been working in the area of leadership transformation. I have 3 kids, and after I was in a senior leadership role on my last kind of corporate gig, and it was during that time when I think I first really started to explore the work of resilience and well-being, you know, as I was pretty much trying to navigate my own journey back into the corporate world and juggling children, and which for any of you obviously who have got children will know that it can be a very difficult thing to manage. Now more than ever, it is, you know, a need for things like resilience and how do we navigate the complexities despite what's going on. But I think it's all fair to say that, you know, life before this pandemic was pretty challenging in itself. This has just added another complexity. Just a bit more about me. So I am certified in the neuroscience of resilience. I've spent 20 years in the media industry. I'm a marketer, storyteller. I'm a descendant of the stolen generation. So I'm what we call a Waka Waka woman. So from an area up in North Queensland. I'm an ambassador for Flexible Working Day and for the Mentor Evolution. And so you can see that my passion really is in the area of performance and courageous leadership, which, as we know during these times, is what's absolutely required. So today we are going to get into talking about what it takes to build a resilient mindset during difficult times. And these are the things we want to briefly talk about today. Firstly, I do want to actually spend a lot of time engaging with you, participating in some of these activities so that you get a direct experience of what that's like. So we're going to start with, you know, finding out why you're here. I am going to ask you to use the chat box to type into the box, you know, where you're from. I need to put on my glasses at this point. Yeah, use the chat box to let us know where you're from. Let me just make sure I've got that chat box working for myself. Here we go. Yeah, so just give a big hello, use the chat box, open up, let me know who you are, where you're from, why you're here. We are then going to talk about one of the specific challenges overall that makes it easier for all of us to navigate the difficulty. Then we're going to talk about 6 key strategies that we can use. And then I wanted to end on specifically the, hey Dee, welcome from Sydney. Then I am going to end the session talking about the A game, specifically 3 simple A's that you can apply immediately. So let's find out where you're from. Please let us know. Say hi, Courtney from Sydney. You know, why are you here? You're here for yourself. You're here for business. You're here for your teams. Maybe you've got clients. I think we can all admit. So Michael Farmer in Connecticut, USA. Welcome, Michael. Mike from New Zealand. Welcome, Mike. We've got Emma from Sydney. Sue Dana. Welcome, Sue. Kiora from Christchurch. Welcome, Sue. Jane, we've got Jane from Melbourne. Welcome, Jane. Mindy representing Sydney. Belinda from Canberra. Welcome, Belinda. Let me just go back here. Julian from Malaysia. Welcome, Julian. Natalie Jenkins, Block Branding in Perth. Welcome, Natalie. Can't see the other chats. Yeah, so if you'd like to, this is just check your panelist box. If you can you can choose either attendees or let me see. If you choose all panelists and attendees, that will make sure that in the chat everybody can see who's here, which I do really want to give you the chance to be able to talk to each other. So if you switch in your chat box to all panelists and attendees, then we'll make sure that everybody can actually see what you're putting into chat box. Welcome, Jamie. Jamie from Brisbane, Lydia from Trinity in Sydney. All right, welcome. Yeah, Dee, that's great. Thanks, Michael. Paul Gordon from Sydney. Welcome, Paul. We've got Linda from Melbourne. Yeah, you want to learn how it can apply for yourself. You're an executive team at this time. Absolutely. Carl from Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. Welcome, Carl. James from Sydney, yeah, for your team. Yeah, I think there's many of us here as leaders that, you know, not only are we looking at what we can apply for ourselves, but also how can we use what we're learning today to support our families and also to support our teams. And you'll absolutely be able to take some stuff today to be able to do that. Okay, great. So welcome and thanks everyone for being here. If you jump in at any point, you're welcome to chat. And as Darren mentioned, if you weren't here at the beginning, there's a separate function at the bottom of the screen that allows you specifically to ask a question. The Q&A section is not visible to everybody else in the session. So if you do want to ask anything privately, you're welcome to send the question in that section. Well, I think it's fair to say that there is a world of uncertainty going on. You know, the potential life-threatening issues of health at stake, not only for ourselves, but also for our family. You know, and the threat of, you know, you're not in this alone. I mean, the losses of jobs, future employment and income. I certainly know for myself personally about the week that this actually started. You know, over the course of 2 weeks, I slowly but surely had clients dropping off. Clients having to make a significant amount of redundancies and restructuring, job losses and losing their staff. In fact, I remember one of my clients in particular, I reached out to her to see how she was personally going, and on that particular day she had to let go of 154 staff. So it is a very difficult time. It can activate a lot of loneliness for some people, you know, when you're now at home, and, you know, there are people certainly who are at home dealing with the chaos of having children and or with family, but equally so, we've got a significant amount of people who are dealing with loneliness. Then, of course, we've got the wider impact economically, you know, another layer to add to the uncertainty and complexity. And then this dramatic decrease in what we are so used to as human beings in our social interactions, in our connections with others, changes in the way that we're working. How does one maintain, you know, meaningful relationships with people outside of our own family? And these kind of things can play havoc on our brain and certainly on our experience of life. So adding complexity, of course, again, you've got this pandemic, which we know as far as the emotional impacts, we've got a significant amount of stress that's coming from all directions. And, you know, even those of us who may feel pretty well protected are experiencing heightened stress, not only from ourselves personally, but from what's occurring outside. I mean, you may feel completely at ease yourself, but the people around you may be going through a significant amount of stress. Certainly know with even my family, I mean, I've got 3 children, and, you know, whilst there's times where I feel rather stable for myself, you know, the heightened sense of anxiety and the stress that's around us can leave us feeling like, you know, we don't have much control over that. So we've got stress, an increased level of anxiety, and then underneath everything is this fundamental fear driven by the uncertainty. Now, I think it's times like this that we probably need to also look at the experience of that stress is something that's sitting from underneath the surface. See, if we look at this, I think this is a really great analogy for life and success. And as human beings, we tend to relate to success in life based on the things that we see externally. You know, I mean, if you look at your own life and you look at your experience of yourself during this crisis, for example, you know, we look at things like our jobs, the amount of money we have, and our relationships is the things that are going on external. And they're the things that sit above the surface. It's the things that we don't normally see that are the things that cause us to experience stress, fear, and anxiety. And they're the things, if we think about our experience, are the things that we experience internally. So let's just take a look for yourself about whether you've noticed any of the following. So, you know, let's just bring this back to our own life. So I want you to ask yourself any of these questions. And just in the chat box, I'd like you to let me know, you know, have you experienced one or maybe all of them? Have you indulged in emotional eating? I'm certainly guilty of that one. Skipped exercise because you've got no motivation. What about poor sleep due to stress? Alcohol. Who's using alcohol? Eating chocolate right now. Paul Gordon, good on you for eating chocolate right now. 2 and 5, yep, no exercise. Poor sleep, use of alcohol, spending money on unnecessary things, using drugs to help us cope. And I've put caffeine here, but of course, caffeine's not the only source of drugs, right? Yes to just a few. Who's the yes to all of the above? In times like this, I need my good herbal tea. Pretty much all of the above. Look, I think it's fair to say that at some point, especially during times like these, that there's one or more of these things that will be going on. And in fact, before the pandemic, it is also fair to say that these are the kind of triggers that set us off and things that we're doing, which are a result of making sure ways to manage stress. So I want to talk briefly about one universal challenge. And that is the brain. See, when we look at all of these things going on, it really does occur to us like we have absolutely no control over what's going on. And to some extent, that is true. But the truth of that lack of control comes not from our own personal ability. It actually exists in something that is, in many respects, out of our control, and that's the brain. See, the way that the brain works is we've got 2 parts, and I'm not going to go into this in huge amount of detail because, quite frankly, the actual science of this will bore many of you. So I'm just going to keep it very simple for today's session. If you are somebody who likes the research and likes the detail, then you're more than welcome to pop in the Q&A box. Please, you know, provide more detail, and I'm happy to do that. But just to give you an understanding of what's happening and why we're experiencing this at the moment, is there's 2 parts to the brain. So you've got the prefrontal cortex, which sits at the front, and then you've got the limbic brain, which is what we call well, I tell my kids there's the smart brain, which is at the front, and then there's the dumb brain at the back. So the limbic brain is the part where we have the fear, fight, and flight response. Now, the truth of the matter is, in situations like this, all of those reactions, the drinking alcohol, the eating chocolate, everything that we're doing is because we're sitting in the emotional part of the brain, in the limbic brain. And it is as if it has taken control over us. And our experience is that we're not actually able to control what we're doing. It just seems to be happening to us. And that is because we are operating, take our thoughts, our feelings, and all of the actions are coming from the limbic brain. Now, when we're faced with scarcity, which is pretty much what's happening right now, and anyone who likes, to read, so you might remember Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He talks about scarcity as a mindset. When there is scarcity in life, called loss of jobs, loss of income, and it's a constant reminder, what happens in the brain is we get stuck in the limbic part of the brain, and then we have what's called acronym ANTS, automatic negative thoughts. And it seems like those automatic negative thoughts just do not stop, unless sometimes we're either having a drink of alcohol or we're going to bed. Now, for many of us, it could be that you actually escape down to the beach. You might like to just get a breath of fresh air. They are the moments when you're actually getting yourself out of the limbic brain and into the prefrontal cortex. That's where you get your creativity. You start to think clearly, and then your decision making from that part of the brain becomes more robust and healthier. So the goal, if anything, out of all of this is to have you switch out of the limbic brain and into the prefrontal cortex to slow things down and allow you to make decisions that are consistent with the way that you want to live your life, or the truth of the way that you want to live your life. Now, the structure of the activities and the strategies that we're going to talk about are going to address this part of the brain. So there is a fundamental need, and a very simple way to look at it, that the reason that we're having this experience is because we've lost all of these fundamental requirements that are necessary to feed ourselves. They've lost status. For many people, losing their jobs, status is a big threat. We've got no certainty, and it feels like there's no autonomy to make any decisions right now. The relatedness aspect, completely gone. No connection, no sense of experience, unless you're really good at being able to do that while you're going through this. And fairness, well, certainly in a situation like this, it completely occurs like this. It is not fair. Now, what happens then is we're either moving away from the threat, and we're all moving towards response to a pleasurable situation. So at the moment, probably most of us would feel like we're going away more from the threat. So the truth is, we cannot control everything that happens in life. That is absolutely certain. But there is something that we do have control over to enable us to switch that part into that part of the brain. And it's all to do with how we respond. So the first thing I'm going to invite you to do, I am going to share with you one of the practices that we have in our culture, and I think it's a really valuable tool. Fundamentally, if this is one thing that you take out of today, that I can guarantee you that it will make a significant difference in your experience of what is happening, so that you can deregulate that prefrontal, the limbic brain, and regulate the prefrontal cortex, so that you can experience more fulfillment and satisfaction. The practice is called deep listening. We call it Didiri in our culture, and it's a practice of bringing stillness and a quietness to our thoughts based on a mutual respect for humanity. And I quite liked this quote, actually. It's quite a good analogy. If you think about it like a tree standing in the middle of a bushfire, which for the most part is pretty much how we feel right now, right? And it's as if that bushfire is literally burning and scorching the leaves, scorching the bark on the outside, and we feel like we are under threat. But inside the tree, there is a sap that still flows, and then underneath the ground, that we've got roots, and it's the roots that are still very, very strong. And so when we practice bringing stillness, and I'm going to give you a couple of methods to do this, we're able to focus on the roots being strong rather than focusing on the leaves that feel like they're burning. So how do we do that? Well, let's just make it simple. Firstly, I'm going to invite you in this session. If you're now, like many of you have come to this workshop and you are already distracted, you might be sitting in a lounge room where there's a lot of kids. You might be actually just coming off the back of having to deal with some arguments with your family. Whatever it is that you're doing, I'm going to invite you right now just to remove any distractions you've got. If you've got the TV on, Do you have your phone or your device beside you? Are you checking emails while you're listening to this session? Have you got kids in the background? This is your chance to stop all of it. I know that sometimes for many of us, that is just going to be a difficult exercise in itself, but I really do invite you to do it as a practice to remove everything you can. Then I'm going to invite you to simply just sit and breathe as we go through the session. You know, you've got the benefit of being here with me for the next 45 minutes where don't have to focus on anything else other than your own breathing. And, you know, I know when I first got started in this journey for myself, I hated meditation. I hated this practice of deep breathing. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. What kind of difference is that really going to make? But over time, I did recognize that actually just this one exercise can make a significant amount of difference. So as you breathe deeply through the session, you may notice that you'll be distracted by your thoughts. You know, just put in the chat box, actually, just let me know. Have you ever noticed how, in fact, you might be noticing right now that your mind is wandering? You know, you're thinking about what are you got to do next? Maybe you're thinking or wondering, I wonder what's going to come next. How much longer is this going to go for? You know, what kind of strategies are we going to go? I mean, if you take a look, you know, if I just kind of give you the silence for a moment, just listen to the conversation you're having with yourself. So you could probably tell that you could sit here for the next 45 minutes and have a great old yarn to yourself about what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's constant, isn't it, Court, right? So just so that you know, I mean, there's no doubt the things that I'm going to share with you today are going to provide enormous value, for sure. But it's not the content, nor is it what I'm saying to you that's going to make any difference to your life. In fact, the only thing that's going to make any difference out of this session is what you decide to do with what I say. So if you're able to notice every time you're having a conversation and your mind's wandering, and you bring yourself back to the session to listen for how's this going to apply to me, I can guarantee you'll see for yourself some actions that you can put in place so that you can take action. But see, truthfully, most of you actually know what you need to do. In fact, the fact that you're on this call even says to me that you're pretty clear that you know what you need to do to make sure that you get what you need. In fact, most of you are already resilient human beings. We are all resilient in dealing with what we're dealing with. So what I'm interested in today is that you actually get an access to being able to put in practice the things that you know make a difference. So there's two things that we want to move on to from there in the activity. One is give yourself the space to make judgment and then just withhold the judgment. See, all human beings judge. We judge ourselves, we judge others, we judge this content. Do I like this? Do I not like this? Do I agree with what she's saying? Do I disagree with what she's saying? And I want you to know that's all very normal and valid. So open monitoring is allowing yourself to have the judgment, just be with the judgment, and then allow yourself to withhold it and put it to the side. The fourth part is then simply focusing on what you want from this session. So this is a chance where I'm going to now invite you to look at specifically what do you want, because you could come here and just think that everything is gone to shit. And it may well be have gone to shit in your life, much like many people. But if we sit here and be general about everything, we don't get any access to shifting anything. So the intention here is to look at what is the one thing that you can focus on during this session. How many of you can see you've got a lot of complaints? A simple yes in the chat box. Complaints about work, complaints about money, complaints about your partner, complaints about your relationship with your kids, complaints about yourself not being able to eat well or exercise enough. So just plug into the chat box. Yes, I have loads of complaints. Yes, I have enough. Maybe you just got one big complaint. Yes, loads of complaints. Welcome to the party. Lots of challenges. Yes. So I'm going to ask you to focus on just one thing. And if you want this session to make a really big difference for you, I am going to invite you to choose the one that would make the biggest difference. Like if you wake up and the very first thing you think about every day is how am I going to put food on the table? If you wake up every day and go, what am I going to do to get a job? What am I going to do to get a job? If that is the constant thing in your head, that's the one area I would suggest you pick for this session. Now, if you have a pen and a paper, now would be the time to write that down for yourself. Just write it down. What is the area? I'm working on work. My complaint is my relationship. My complaint is being a parent. My complaint is the government and what they're doing about this crisis. So on a piece of paper, write down the complaint that you've got, and you can simply label it work, money, or relationship. And your job now in this session is anytime you're distracted, anytime you notice yourself wandering, simply go back and focus on that particular issue and look at what do I want? What would be the thing that would make the biggest difference to me if I was to positively impact that area? Okay, first, practice. I know this is going to sound very simple to many of us, but out of everything that's going on, we're going to talk about 6 different strategies in order to enact and things that you can do practically. But first and foremost, the thing that I am going to ask you to do is practice compassion for yourself. I'm not asking you to think about anyone else outside at the moment. This is not about, being empathetic towards your circumstances. This is not about having compassion for what others are dealing with. I'm simply asking you to focus on having some kindness to yourself. Be kind towards yourself instead of judging yourself. Isolating yourself or isolation about your personal experience is the second aspect. Removing the isolation and recognizing that what you are dealing with is not personal to you, because it is not. It is even the reaction that we have is not us. It is a function of our brain doing its thing in response to what's happening outside. So focusing on the fact that it's common humanity to deal with this, it's not personal to me. And then the final aspect of compassion is actual mindfulness, being able to stop, separate yourself from the situation with the presence of the didiri, the deep listening, just one simple practice, versus over-identifying with the emotion. Oh, it's just that I'm having a thought or a feeling about something. It doesn't mean that I actually am in that state. So first and foremost, practice compassion. Now, if you come back to this, anytime you're under stress, to remind yourself to be kind to yourself, just that activity in that area of your life can relieve the experience of any frustration or pain or anxiety, but certainly remove that lack of control that we may experience in that area. So that's the first practice. Now, what are the 6 strategies? So I'm going to go through briefly 6 different things that you can do specifically, and they're very practical. And then I'm actually going to take you deeply into 3 areas so I can actually get you to share with me about some of the actions that you can see that you could take. So the 6 strategies are part of a tool that I've been using. There's so one of my partners and providers, Driven Resilience, the research that they've done over the last 5 years does a deep dive into 6 different domains. Each of these very unique, but each of them having a direct correlation to being able to reduce stress, build confidence, and increase your level of resilience when you're faced with difficult times. I mean, it may just be simple roadblocks. You get stuck in traffic and you get pissed off with the person driving in the car that's cutting you off, or, maybe you go to the coffee shop in the morning and they don't have your normal coffee, or the coffee shop's closed. Those little things can set us off. So it's not just the big stuff like the pandemic. It can be those little things that irritate you, like technology not working, or your internet connection's not great, or someone yelling out to you from the other end of the house and they annoy you. I mean, those little grievances can really set us off. So there are 6 different things and areas that you can work on. The one at the top is at the top for a reason, because even if you've got everything else in place, if you feel like you've got no clear purpose, no goals, no sense of meaning for yourself in life, this can be a trigger for losing any sense of control and certainty. So vision is the first one. The second one is composure, which we're working on a lot in this session, if you've noticed. So the practice of bringing stillness and breathing, removing the distractions, that enables us to be calm and in control when things get rough. So in the area of composure, we're really talking about, how do I regulate my emotion? How do I slow things down? So the action of deep breathing is one that really does help. And in fact, composure and vision are two of the ones that I am going to talk about in detail today. So I will go into those in a minute. The third strategy is what we call reasoning. And the reasoning aspect is about dealing with decision making. I mean, how many of you at the moment find you're really struggling with being able to make decisions? Like, it just seems like there's so many different things that you need to attend to, and you're just not sure where to start first. I mean, do I put in the application for the government rebates? Do I chase for work? Do I just chill out? Do I go for a walk? Like, there is so many things that are coming at us that our ability to be resourceful and make decisions at that point can be very, very challenging. So the third strategy is about looking at what you can do to improve your ability to make decisions when things are coming at you and you're not sure about how to prioritize to set those things out. The third one, which is another one we're going to talk about in detail today, because it is really in a pandemic, the health is probably the one thing that we do have absolute control over. And that is what we eat, that is the quality of our sleep, and exercise. And if you look, whilst we don't have control about anything else, they are three things that we know that can give us certainty, autonomy, and control over what's happening. So we are going to talk about that in a little bit more detail. The fifth one is tenacity. And this is those areas, in fact, that most of us have been technically, how one would normally describe resilience. Oh, I'm resilient because I'm bouncing back. I have no problem bouncing back. Well, yeah, that's sure. You might be great at bouncing back and be persistent. But my question is it with negativity and strength, or is it with realistic optimism? Do you tend to have a very negative view, and are you bouncing back, taking actions that are driven by fear? Or are you stepping yourself back and taking actions that are consistent with a realistic perspective on the opportunity of this situation? Many of us are stuck in a world of negativity right now, negative about the outcome, negative about the situation. And as much as we try to be optimistic about what's happening, it's as if that part of the brain telling us, oh yeah, it's all great to be optimistic, but let's just look at the situation called this is not great. And then all of a sudden we're back into that spiraling negativity. Now, if you're doing that, that's pretty good indication that tenacity at the moment is an area that could do with some work. How does one shift our attention from a negative reaction into one that's realistic? Now, notice I said realistic, not positive. In fact, steering away from negative and positive is probably one of the best things that you can do in the area of tenacity. If you're looking at agree, disagree, like, dislike, negative, positive, that's not going to give you any access to shifting anything. The area to shift in that area is simply to look at what is something that's realistic. What are the things that I can look at that could be an opportunity out of this situation? How can I reframe what's happening? What is one good thing that I could look at out of this situation? That can also be really important and valuable for people in this day. The last one, the sixth strategy, is collaboration. Now, as you know, social distancing has made this one difficult, but thanks to technology, we do have the ability to be able to connect with other people still. And it is important when it comes to building a resilient mindset. And I think the most important reason in this one is if you're looking at the conversations that you're even having with yourself today, in the background, you can imagine that if you're locked away long enough in the silence of your own thoughts, that can be pretty destructive. So the area of collaboration is not necessarily saying that you've got to go out and be an extrovert. you don't have to go socialize physically with other human beings. This is simply the decision about making meaningful connections. Just the simple fact that knowing that you have meaningful relationships with people can make the difference. In fact, you can achieve collaboration without actually having any physical contact at all with anybody else. See, if you make a decision for yourself that you believe that you've got the right kind of support you need, that you've got a meaningful relationship with somebody that you can call on whenever you need, just activating that decision will be sufficient for you to recognize and get yourself out of that negative state and put yourself into the prefrontal cortex where you're able to think more clearly, be more creative, get more resourceful, take an action that you know is consistent with what you know to do, like not going to the fridge and having the chocolate when you know that eating the chocolate's no good for you, or not going to the bar fridge at night and opening up a beer or pouring yourself a glass of wine, 2, 3, or maybe even a bottle of wine to get yourself through when you know that that's not going to be helping you long term. See, changes are not going to happen overnight. But when you apply any one of these strategies, you're able to change the behavior and actions that you're taking that are not consistent with what it is that you truly want, which fundamentally is all about well-being, about being satisfied, a sense of peace and calm. Sometimes it's actually just feeling a deep sense of confidence in oneself to be able to get through and achieve our goals and be the great human being that we know we desire to be when we're confronted with those threats. So that is a high level snapshot of the 6 different strategies. I do want to go into now the 3 areas that are very important during a time like this. Before we do that, I just want to make sure how we're going for time. So the first one's vision. So loss of purpose. So I now want you to jump in the chat box and just let me know in terms of vision, losses of job, purpose, income, hobbies, goals, anything that's been disrupted for you. You may notice that there's things like going to the gym. You're not able to go to the gym because the gym's closed down. Maybe you were into swimming and the local pool's gone down. Maybe you like to go to the beach. The beach is shut down. You've lost your job. You've got no income. Your relationships are at stake. Excellent. Lots of concentration. Playing sport. Yes. Frequent travel with work. Absolutely. Yeah, the travel one's a big one for a lot of people. So what happens, so there's some strategies we want to look at. So firstly, during this time, there's 3 things you can do. Firstly, you want to look at different goals. See, whilst we've had certain goals that are important to us, we've now got to look at, well, what are some of the other goals that I do have control over? Maybe there's something that you can choose around your health, for example. What can you do to create a meaningful goal that gives you a new purpose? Now, maybe there are things that you've been putting off. Maybe if you're somebody who does travel a lot, you haven't had time at home to do the things that you know that you've been wanting to get to. I'm certainly not a gardener by any stretch of the imagination, but, I was talking with a friend the other day who all of a sudden now she's out in the garden doing all these things that she wished she had got done. Well, lack of CrossFit, yeah, group exercise classes motivates you. So during those times, so what is it that you could do? So given you can't travel, you can't go to the gym and do your CrossFit class, you've lost all your job and income, so your purpose of going to work has shifted. What is it that you could do? What is it that you do have control over that you could take on? So I want you to now look at what are something you have done. See, many of you probably haven't even recognized that you're already pretty resilient with these strategies. So in the chat box, what is the impact of you losing your purpose? Or what have you done to adapt? And are any of these ideas that we've shared something that you could apply? So what have we got? Oh, great. Courtney's got a long list of things to catch up on. So what's one thing that you could catch up on? Writing a book. Yeah, Michael, great idea. Writing a book. Now's the great time to do that. Our choir is meeting. Oh, you're a singer, Paul Gordon. Interesting. My housemate is a CrossFit trainer. Connect me with. Yeah. In fact, we had I'm now doing an online yoga session with a lady who's doing it on Facebook Live, which has been amazing. Working on self-care. Yeah. Supporting your kids. Yes. Exercise more, rest more. Beautiful. Anyone else now binging on Netflix? Make sure it's worthwhile. Sorting out your wardrobe. Yeah, great idea, Courtney. That's a fun one. Cooking with the kids. Yes, as long as they don't go crazy. Learning to touch type. Wow. No time for Netflix. Recommend self-made though. Yeah. Time with the kids is a good one. Look, a very interesting thing about the kid one. I mean, for those of you who don't get enough time with your kids, the kids have got a very different experience of this crisis. In fact, I was talking about this yesterday. The crisis for our kids is actually taking them back to a time when it was like for us as kids, when we didn't have devices, where we had to go out in the yard and make things up. So this is a time where we can have this be one of the most memorable and enjoyable times for our kids. So if you're a parent, that as a purpose can give you a lot of strength. Okay, next one. So there's a few examples of what you can do in vision. Composure. Right, the influence of COVID on our ability to stay composed is huge. I mean, you may notice your ability to, the anger, the frustration, the stress, the anxiety, the fear. I don't know about you, but my limbic brain has a way of immediately activating the second I get out of bed. It's like default, wake up and all of a sudden, bang, there it is, concern, stress, kids, how am I going to juggle 3 kids, homeschool, anger, frustration immediately kicks in. The limbic brain goes into constant activation. And that is no fault of our own. That is something that occurs by default. It's been wired that way. So we do feel like there's an absolute loss of control. Now, what can we do about it? Strategies. So first thing, the practice of stillness is a really great thing to start doing a lot more of. The action of removing all distractions, slowing yourself down. Notice when you get stressed. Even if you just notice when you're stressed, that is a win. So if you can recognize, oh, I'm stressed right now, that is, for many of us, that will be a leap ahead than where you've ever been. See, most of us just walk around stressed. But if you can notice when you're stressed, then that's the first step. Second one is remove yourself from the situation. Okay, so if you notice that you're stressed, you're reacting to your kids, you're about to yell, you're about to get angry and upset, and then you just notice that whatever comes out of your mouth after that is not pretty. I think that's the nice way of saying it. And we all do it. And when you're angry, you say things that you regret. You do things that you regret. But unfortunately, you can't take those things back. What gets said has an impact. So when you notice the stress and you notice yourself angry, frustrated, and about to unload, my number one tip is to remove yourself. Get out of it. It's like, get out of the way. So I remember when I first started practicing this for myself, I had a habit, what turned into 7 o'clock went to 6 o'clock, went to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, where you get out the glass of wine because, the kids are really driving you crazy, in my world anyway. So what I would do is I would swap. So I recommend swapping. I wish I was, my 3-year-old was on. You wish you're 3. Well, I'm happy to do one for the kids if you liked. For any parents out there, I do this work with my children. If you've got anyone who's upwards of 8 years old, some of these strategies are incredibly beneficial. So here's what I recommend. Swap yourself. See, when we take things out of existence, we feel like we're losing something. We don't want you to feel like you're missing out on anything. So rather than feel like you're going to miss out on the beer or you're going to miss out on the wine because it makes you feel better, swap it. Now, if you're somewhere that's close to a beach or you're in a nice area that you can go for a walk, swap it for a walk. If you, my one at the time when I first did this was I'd go for a massage. So instead of going to the pub to get out of the environment here, I'd go for a drink. Like, kid you not, that was my escape. I swapped it for going to a local massage place, and it was amazing. So focus it on something that you can do. Now, if you need to swap our kids, you're funny, Shireen. Okay, so self-compassion is a big one. Deep breathing, take yourself to your bedroom and stop and go quietly. Now, I've just noticed that we've gotten to 10 minutes. Now, we did start 5 minutes. We did start about 5 minutes late. So just to let you know, I've got one more strategy to go through, and then we're going to flip to something that you can do to immediately build your resilience outside of this session. So just quickly in the chat box, what can you do to improve your composure? What have you done already to adapt? And are there any of the ideas that I've just shared with you that you could take? Deep breathing. Can you take yourself to your bedroom? Can you swap it out? What's one thing you could do? Just in the chat box. Yes, keep silent when angry and remove yourself. Great. So share in the box. What's the one thing that you can do to improve composure? Could you start every morning with the practice of 2 minutes of breathing deeply in silence? Compassion. Put your kids on the trampoline. Great idea, Paul. Pause and deep breathe. Great idea. Yeah, turn off your technology for a period of time. Brilliant idea. Try to think of the positives. Very good. Okay, simple things. Just focus on one of those a day. Okay, the final one is health. Now, unfortunately, you know, stressful eating, lack of sleep, these new ways of working is going to cause a lot of chaos. You know, we've not got access to a lot of the foods that we'd normally eat. And even just feeling defeated and losing motivation can force us to drink more alcohol, eat more chocolate, and just because we think we deserve it because it's a tough time. So all of that is going to cause you to feel like you are out of control. But the more you do that, the less control you have. So here's some strategies. Firstly, if you know that you can't get away with this whole thing about temptation, remove any temptation out of your fridge. Get rid of the alcohol. I know some of you are saying, I am not getting rid of alcohol or sugar. I understand, no problem. One thing is all you need to take on at a time. But if you can, get rid of the sugar, get rid of the alcohol, get rid of the temptation, just remove it and replace it with something healthy. I know it doesn't happen overnight, but it is something that you can slowly build to, and it does make a massive difference. Focusing on just one exercise habit every day, even if it's 5-minute walk around the block. Get out once a day for 5 minutes. That's all you need. 1,000-mile journey, that old cliche, one single step. The good one here I also recommend is don't have a rule about devices. No devices after 7 o'clock at night. You need devices off for at least 2 hours before you go to bed if you want to get a decent sleep. So now in the chat box, what is one thing that you could do when it comes to your sleep, your nutrition, or your exercise? What is something you have done that's you're already done to adapt? Are there any ideas I've given you that you could try? Yes, replacing wine with kombucha. Great idea. Mineral water is a fabulous one. In fact, mineral water with a lot, you know, lemon, limes and stuff, and added fruit. Use that to replace your wine. Phone off before bed. Absolutely. Regular walk every day. Absolutely. Evening meditation. Yes. Use that to replace the wine. Community-based workouts. Great idea. Run to daycare. I'm holding you accountable for that one, Paul Gordon. Good. Okay, fantastic. Now, I said I'd give you a very simple approach to taking action. I call it the A game. And I call it that so it's easy for you to remember. 3 A's. The first one is acknowledgement. So simply acknowledging how you feel right now. If you notice that you're feeling upset and hurt or angry, just acknowledge what's present. That's the step one. Second one is A, accountability. See, we automatically will blame our external environment. Oh, it's because I can't get this or I can't do that. It's out of my control. I understand that. A, the accountability aspect is about saying, well, what can I do? You know, if I am the one that has a say here, what is the one thing that I could do that would make a difference right now? And then the final A is action. Take action despite what's going on. See, most of us get stopped in even taking the action. You know you need to go exercise. You know you need to meditate. And then you sit there and then you don't do it. Oh, but I'm too tired. Oh, but if I do this, if I say this, oh, but just this one time. Well, no, you need to make a rule for yourself that you take the action that you know to take, despite how you feel, despite what you think will happen. Take the action anyway. So 3 A's: acknowledgement, accountability, and then take the action. Very simple. If you play that game for 1 week, I promise you, there will be miracles show up in your experience of what's happening in your life. So finally, I now want to know from you, what are the actions you're going to take? So we've talked about 3 strategies: health, composure, and vision. Which one of those are you going to put in place? So label it in the box, please. Type it in: health, type it in purpose, or composure. Then once you've typed in the area, I want you to put in the chat box, what's one action you're promising? Okay, I promise to eat a healthy breakfast every day. I promise to go for a 5-minute walk every day. I promise to turn off devices after 6 o'clock every day. So what's the promise? Then the final aspect is accountability. You can't go past the value of accountability. Honestly, making these promises to yourself is one level. The next level of having you win at the game is to tell the people you care about. Like if you've got a partner, go tell the partner, listen, I'm making a promise to turn devices off at 9 o'clock. Will you support me in making sure I do that? Great. If you've got kids, maybe you want to make a promise to your kids. Let's go exercise. We'll go for a walk to the park. If I promise to do this with you at 5 o'clock every day. That's the promise that you need to make to yourself. Then I invite you to make that promise with one other person in your life. And it's got to be relevant. So I'll give you another example. Michael Farmer, if writing a book is something that's really important to you, I would find somebody in your community who you know that you can hold to account for that. Someone potentially that you work with, a partner, a friend. Let them know you're going to write 1 chapter in the next 30 days and then share it with them. So that's it on the actions and the promises. There is a very simple way to build resilience, and I'm going to give you 2 ways that you can do this. Firstly, you can download an app scientifically tested to do your own personal resilience report. It is very simple. It takes 4 minutes, 16 questions. And that's what your report will look like. So when you do it, it will tell you specifically, you can see on the right, you'll get a little circle. It will tell you a resilience rating. For example, if you go, I'm on 80% or I'm 40%, and then it will tell you which of those 6 strategies are the area that you need to work on. So if you're somebody who has a very low composure, it will give you a score on composure, and then it will give you the activities that you can do. Video tutorials, and it's all by artificial intelligence. So it's by an app, like what do you call them? Little chat boxing. So that is a very simple way to get you started. It comes with 200 techniques and skills, resources, each for those 6 different domains. It gives you the activities to create goals. It gives you activities to manage your app. So what's it called? It's called Driven Resilience. If you open your phone, if you can't open your phone while you're doing this video, I got that, write it down. Driven Resilience app. So write that down, download it. You can get it from the App Store. If you use the code that we've set up for you, it's not free. Let me just start off being very clear with you. That app is not free. It will cost you US $7 a month. But I spoke to the providers. They've given us a 50% off discount if you use the code here, and that code is valid until the 18th of April. So I recommend you write it down, TP3-COVD. Now, we will put this in the email afterwards, so you'll get an email in the next, in fact, right at the end of this session, we are going to send you an email. You'll get access to the links and the codes. Put it in. If you have any questions, we can follow it up in an email in another week. But use that code, get 50% off, $3.50 per month for the next 2 months. That's the first strategy. That's option one. The second option is if you want to work with me for 7 weeks, I'm giving 50% off doing this week by week for 7 weeks. I'm going to deep dive in each of the sessions. Of course, it won't be as fast paced like we're having to do today because we've only got 60 minutes. I feel like I'm running through this so quickly. But if you want to work with me, I've taken 50% off, only $295 for 7 weeks. Every week, I'm going to do 60 minutes on one domain. I'm going to give you all the neuroscience of each aspect. We got practical tips. It'll be interactive. It'll be live, so you'll get to talk to me. I'll also do a second session in that week. So that's 2 sessions every week. The second one will be a 45-minute coaching session. I won't give you any information. It'll be simply you coming in and we will actually do some coaching in the group. You'll get access then into a private online community, nobody else except for those who are participating, where you can then discuss. I will mentor you through. You can talk about what you're doing, what's working, what's not, what do you need help with, and you'll get your own resilience report. And the 200 activities, not bad. $295, very cheap. Again, the details will come through in the link in the email afterwards so that you can register if you'd like to do that. Quite frankly, if you get to spend 7 weeks with me, I can promise you miracles. If you would like to just connect with me, now before we go, we're going to talk specifically about the upcoming webinars that we've got coming up. It's not just this one. We've got a series of sessions, free workshops happening over the next couple of weeks. So please stick around to get that. Darren's going to jump back on in about half a minute. But if you want to connect with me, go to theperformancecode.co. If you are able to scan the QR code, it will take you specifically. Great, see you on the 7 weeks, Paul. Well done. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, go there, join me. You can connect with me and I can always send you more details. And other than that, feel like I've gone at 100 miles an hour, but I'm now going to hand back over and do a Q&A with Darren. I think we do want to talk specifically about the workshops coming next first. So Darren, you there? Let me just... Okay, while we're waiting for Darren, this is a chance for any Q&A. If you want to put in any questions in the chat box, any questions, anything that's unclear about what you've covered.
Okay, I'm back. Yep.
Hey, Darren, welcome back. So just while we're going through great content, any questions quickly? Is there anything in the chat?
There's nothing. Well, we've had 2 questions come up, which I've answered directly. So, but there's no questions at the moment.
Okay, beautiful. All right, great. Well, do you want to then run through what's next?
Sure. So what we've got is, this is the first of a series of workshops. Next week is Making Marketing Strategy Stick with Sean Callahan from Anecdotes. So that's all about how to use storytelling or strategic storytelling to actually help you get people engaged and owning the strategy rather than just it being a strategy document. Then beyond that, we've got unlocking performance post lockdown, and we've also got growing your independent agency in challenging times and beyond. So if you go to trinityp3.com /business events, all of the webinars, upcoming webinars and workshops are linked there with links through to Eventbrite so you can secure your place. Go to the next. Now, we're recording this at the moment and that'll be available soon. To make sure you get your copy, obviously you've registered, but if you subscribe at trinityp3.com /subscribe, you'll get regular updates of all the activities that we're organising for you. Now, before we finish, there is an email that's just about to go out to you. It's got links to various follow-up areas, and it's also got a feedback form so that you can give us feedback on this session and make suggestions on things that you'd like to see in future. So before we go, I'd really like to thank Kylee. One of the things that I love about your approach in coaching as well as mentoring is that it's always practical. You always give people great things that they can actually do. So thank you very much.
Welcome.
All right. If that's it, everyone have a great day. Stay safe and stay healthy, and we'll see you soon.